Maya Chen arrived at the hospital at 10 p.m. with coffee stains on her scrubs from the shift she hadn't finished yet. She had been on her feet for 9 hours. She had 4 more to go before anyone would relieve her. The fluorescent lights in the hallway outside the break room had been flickering for 3 weeks, and no one had fixed them, and every time Maya walked under them, she thought about how a hospital that couldn't change a bulb made her nervous about everything else it might be ignoring. She poured bad coffee into a paper cup and drank it standing up. Donna was at the nurse's station when Maya came back out. Donna had been the charge nurse on this floor for 19 years. She was the kind of woman who had earned her authority through 19 years of hard, real work, and had somewhere along the way confused authority with ownership. She looked at Maya the way you look at furniture that has been placed wrong. "Patient in 14B is asking for someone experienced," Donna said, without looking up from her clipboard. Maya said nothing. She went to 14B. The patient in 14B was a 60-year-old man with a blood pressure that had no business being where it was, and a wife who stood up the moment Maya walked in and looked past her toward the door, waiting for someone else to follow. No one followed. "I'd like to speak with the doctor," the wife said. "He'll be by in about 40 minutes, Maya said. "Right now I need to check your husband's pressure and adjust his fluids. Is that okay?" The wife sat back down without answering. Maya checked the pressure. She adjusted the fluids. She reviewed his chart, standing at the foot of the bed with the quiet focus of someone reading something that actually mattered, and she noticed at the bottom of the medication log, in small print, nearly lost under 2 other orders, that his insulin had been scheduled at a dose that would have sent his blood sugar through the floor by 2 a.m. She flagged it. She corrected it. She noted it in the chart, precise and time-stamped, and she mentioned it to the resident on call, who half listened and said, "Good catch," with the energy of someone who had not registered what was caught. Maya went back to the hallway. She had 2 pens behind her left ear. She had carried 2 pens behind her left ear since nursing school, because she was always losing one, and her instructor had told her once that the nurses who kept their patients alive were the ones who were prepared for the thing they didn't expect. She had never forgotten that. She had also never stopped losing pens. She worked through midnight. She worked through 1 a.m. A woman in 9A, with post-surgical pain who kept pressing her call button, not because the pain was unbearable, but because she was alone and afraid. And Maya sat with her for 7 minutes, not because she had 7 minutes, she didn't, but because 7 minutes was what the woman needed to breathe again. A child in pediatric overflow who had pulled his IV line and was crying more from embarrassment than pain. An elderly man who asked Maya 3 times what her name was, and each time she told him, and each time he smiled like it was the first time he'd heard it. This was the work, not the dramatic version of the work, the actual work, which was mostly small and invisible, and mattered more than anyone standing outside it understood. At 4:47 a.m., the ER bay doors opened. Maya heard it before she saw it. Not noise exactly, but a kind of pressure change, the way a room shifts when something significant enters it. She was at the nurse's station finishing a chart when Donna appeared at the end of the hallway with an expression Maya had not seen on her face before. "Overflow," Donna said. 18. "You're taking them." Maya looked up. 18 what? "Men," Donna said, and walked away. They came through the hallway in a way that was different from how sick people usually moved. Most patients arrived frightened, or in pain, or confused, or all 3 at once. These men moved carefully, deliberately, like people who had learned a long time ago that the only thing you controlled when everything else was out of control was how you carried yourself. Some were limping. One was on a stretcher. Several had bandaging visible under their clothing, but their faces were composed in a way that told Maya very little about what they were actually feeling, which she recognized as a particular kind of discipline. She did not know who they were. She read the intake forms. She began triage. She worked fast, and she worked in order, and she did not rush the parts that could not be rushed. The man on the stretcher had a shoulder injury that needed imaging. 2 of the men had lacerations that needed closing. One had a blood pressure reading that concerned her enough to flag it immediately. She moved between them steadily, the way water moves, not stopping, finding the path through. The first man she had triaged, the one who had been on the stretcher, was named Marcus. He was 41. He lay still while she worked, and he watched her with the alert, unhurried attention of someone who was used to assessing things quickly and trusted what he saw. He didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. Then, quietly, he said, "You remind me of someone." Maya was checking his blood pressure a second time. She didn't look up. "Does this feel tight?" she said, adjusting the cuff. "Little bit. I'll loosen it slightly. Take a breath." He took a breath. "Who do I remind you of?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Our medic, the way you move, like you already know what's wrong before you finish checking." Maya wrote something in the chart. "What happened to your medic?" "He's fine," Marcus said. "Retired, lives in Colorado now, has a dog named Senator." Maya looked up at that. Marcus almost smiled. She finished the chart and moved on to the next man. Then the next. Then the next. 18 rooms, 18 intake forms, 18 sets of vitals, 18 people who each needed something specific and didn't complain about needing it. She had worked with difficult patients, and she had worked with frightened patients, and she had worked with patients who were rude because they were in pain and had nowhere else to put it. These men were none of those things. They were simply patient. They said thank you. They said it like they meant it. At some point between 5 and 6 a.m., in the supply room, alone for the first time in 2 hours, Maya pressed 2 fingers to her left breast pocket. Inside it, underneath her ID badge, against the fabric of her scrubs, there was a small weight. A flat, familiar weight that she had carried every shift for 4 years. Her father had served 24 years in the Navy. He had come home with a shoulder that ached in cold weather, and something behind his eyes that never quite settled. She had sat with him in hospital waiting rooms, starting at age 18, had watched nurses move through those rooms, and learned, at 18, that you could tell everything you needed to know about a nurse in the first 30 seconds, whether they saw you, whether they registered you as a person or a chart number, whether they had the kind of attention that cost them something to give. She had decided then, in one of those waiting rooms, with her father's hand on her knee and the fluorescent lights humming overhead, that she was going to be one of the ones who saw you. She pressed her fingers to the pocket and went back out. Dawn was beginning to come through the high windows at the end of the hall, the kind of early light that is gray and thin and makes everything look like it is happening inside a photograph. Maya was finishing the last of the charts when Donna arrived for the handoff. Donna walked the floor. She read the boards. She picked up chart after chart and stood very still while she read them, and Maya watched her from the nurse's station and said nothing. Donna set the last chart down. "These are detailed," she said. "I know," Maya said. There was a pause. "All 18 are stable," Maya said. Donna nodded once, the way you nod at something that has surprised you and that you do not intend to make a big thing of. She went to pour coffee. Maya gathered the discharge paperwork. She organized it at the desk, folder by folder, name by name. She had been awake for over 13 hours. Her feet had stopped sending useful information to her brain, somewhere around hour 10, which she had found was a mercy. She was thinking about her car, about the left rear tire she kept meaning to check, about whether she had left her phone charger in locker 14, about nothing in particular. She picked up the stack of folders and walked back down the hall. She heard it before she understood it. A sound, except not a sound exactly, a shift. The same pressure change she had felt at 4:47 a.m., but different in direction, like something settling instead of arriving. She looked up. 17 men were standing. They were standing in the hallway and in the doorways of their rooms. Some of them were in hospital gowns. Some were still in their clothes from the night before. The man with the closed shoulder laceration had one arm in a sling. The man whose blood pressure she had been watching was barefoot on the linoleum. They were standing the way people stand, when standing means something, straight, still, deliberate. The 18th man, Marcus, the one who had come in on the stretcher, was sitting upright in his bed, with his right hand raised to his forehead. Not one of them said a word. Maya stopped walking. She stood in the middle of the hallway with 18 discharge folders held against her chest, and she did not move. She was not a woman who performed emotions for an audience. She had grown up in waiting rooms and hospital corridors, and she had learned early that feelings were real whether or not you showed them, and that showing them was a choice, not a requirement. She stood there, and she received it, this thing being offered to her in absolute silence, and the only part of her that moved was her left hand, which rose slowly to her breast pocket and pressed flat against it. The weight was there, small and familiar and cold from the long night. Donna was at the nurse's station behind her. Maya did not look back, but she heard the typing stop. The salute held. It held the way a held breath holds, complete, present, not waiting for anything. It held for 11 seconds. Then Maya nodded once. She said, softly, "Okay, discharge packets are ready at the desk." She set the folders down. She turned. She walked back up the hallway past the nurse's station, past Donna, who was very still and not looking at her, past the flickering light that still had not been fixed, and into the supply room. She let the door close behind her. She stood in the dark between the shelving units for 45 seconds. She knows the exact number because she counted. It is a habit from nursing school, from a professor who told her once that if you give yourself a specific amount of time for something, you will take only that amount and no more. 45 seconds. Then she fixed her pens. She smoothed her scrubs. She opened the door. The hallway was returning to itself, men moving back into rooms, the particular noise of a hospital morning beginning to build, someone calling for a breakfast menu, a phone ringing at the nurse's station. Maya walked to the desk. She finished the paperwork. She gave a clean handoff to the incoming nurse. She answered 3 questions about the charts, answered them precisely, and gathered her bag from the locker room. She drove home with the windows down, even though it was cold. She slept. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived at the nurse's station, addressed only to the night shift, 3rd floor. No return address. The handwriting was careful and squared, the kind of handwriting that had been trained rather than developed. Inside the envelope was a single card. On the card were 18 signatures, some printed, some cursive, one that was only initials and a small, careful drawing of a dog that someone had labeled Senator in tiny letters beside it. Below the signatures, in the same squared handwriting as the envelope, one line. The paperwork was ready at the desk. Donna found it first. She read it twice. She stood at the nurse's station for a moment with the card in her hand, and then she went to the supply cabinet, got a piece of tape, and put the card on the wall above the medication cart. She did not tell Maya. Maya found it on a Tuesday, 3 days later, on her way to get supplies. She read it once. She read it standing still, which was unusual for her, because Maya in motion was Maya at her most natural. She stood still and she read it once. Then she reached up and tucked a pen behind her left ear, and she went back to work.